My flight landed at Ben Gurion Airport on July 3rd, exactly on time. I know in the summer of air travel disasters, that by itself was a small miracle. But I also arrived right on time to witness a significant moment in Israel's history. As I made my way through the airport and activated my Israeli SIM card, a message popped up on my phone from my good friend Danielle, who lives in Jerusalem. Danielle, what time do you arrive tomorrow? Me. Not tomorrow, today. I'm in the passport area of Ben Gurion right now. Danielle, there's a big demonstration happening right now at the airport. I hope the train is running. The roads are all blocked. Welcome to Israel 2023. So as I walked into the arrivals hall of Ben Gurion, I knew that this visit was different from every other time I have stepped through those doors. Horns, whistles, drums, chanting. It was so loud that it completely disoriented me. Since my return to Vancouver, many of you have inquired about my summer, asking, how was Israel? And the truth is, I still don't really know how to answer that question. My response has usually been something like, great, I mean, wonderful to be there, but it's hard to see what's happening. There is so much anxiety and so much hope. It's just a lot going on. And more recently, I've been adding, stay tuned for Yom Kippur. I'm going to talk about it then. So here we are. And here I am, again, standing before this sacred community to talk about what is happening in Israel. Now, it's not generally good rabbinic practice to preach on the same topic 2 years in a row on Yom Kippur. But so much has happened in the past 12 months that Rabbi Dan and I agreed that it would be rabbinic malpractice not to address Israel this year. Last Yom Kippur, I spoke about the importance of claiming our place as Zionists in the world. I encouraged you to embrace an aspirational Zionism that speaks deeply to who we are as liberal Jews who love Israel. We studied and we discussed in our subsequent classes and seminars the vision of Israel's founders in creating a Jewish and democratic state. One of the main documents that we studied was the Megillat Ha'atzmaut, Israel's Declaration of Independence. The declaration has really resurfaced this year to become an essential accompaniment to conversations about Israel. One paragraph has resonated especially deeply in articulating what it means to have a Jewish and democratic state. The founders proclaimed, "The state of Israel will be open for Jewish immigration and for the ingathering of the exiles. It will foster the development of the country for the benefit of all its inhabitants. It will be based on freedom, justice, and peace as envisaged by the prophets of Israel. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. It will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture." In many ways, what we have seen in the streets of Israel over the past 38 weeks of protest is an effort to preserve the vision of Israel's founders who signed the Declaration in 1948. A Jewish state rooted in Jewish history that provides equal rights to all its individual citizens. In this year of Israel's 75th birthday, 2023 has been one of the most difficult years of Israel's existence. We see existential threats coming not from Israel's external enemies, but from rifts that are deep within Israeli society. Watching from afar here in Vancouver, it has been a challenge to try to understand the situation on the ground. And beyond reading the news sites and listening to podcasts, I find that the best way to get a sense of what is happening is to reach out to Israelis. For me, that includes Danielle, my friend who texted me in the airport. Danielle has lived her entire life in Jerusalem. Her parents of blessed memory were, like so many of their generation, olim, immigrants to the state of Israel. Her mother from the United States and her father from Morocco. As is typical with Israelis, our conversations are held entirely on WhatsApp, and Danielle often sends me voice memo recordings. Thinking about the past year, I have been revisiting those messages, and there are a few that have stuck with me. And though I know they are the anecdotal reflections of only one person, I think her voice is reflective of much of the mood of what Israelis have experienced this year. And I share them to frame my remarks today. And so I begin with WhatsApp audio number 1, March 27th. This was one of the big moments in Israel in the past year. The day after Prime Minister Netanyahu fired his Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant. Israelis streamed into the streets in the late hours of the night in protest of the decision, and it worked. Gallant was reinstated the next day, and I texted Danielle to check in, and here is what she recorded back. Hi, Carey. Thank you for thinking of us. So many people have stakes here, and they are a part of Israel, and Israel is a part of them, and you are one of those people. What has been the most amazing is the fact that these protests are not politically organized, and every kind of group is represented. The flag was reclaimed. The Israeli flag is no longer a right-wing messianic flag. It's our flag. The campaign is very positive, and I feel like we are reclaiming Zionism to its true essence. Ever since Yitzhak Rabin was murdered, the entire center-left was dormant and asleep. Now it feels like an historical moment in which people are waking up. This afternoon, we will read from the book of Jonah. When Jonah was first called by God to go to Nineveh to prophesy to the people, he fled instead on a boat to Tarshish. God was angered by Jonah and caused a storm to rage upon the sea. All of the sailors were alarmed and began heaving cargo over the side of the ship. What did Jonah do? He went down into the hold of the vessel and fell asleep. The captain cried out to Jonah, "Ma lecha nirdam?" Why are you sleeping? There is a storm raging around you, Jonah, and you think you can just close your eyes and snuggle up in bed and it will not harm you? The captain cries out to Jonah, "How can you be sleeping so soundly?" As writer and Jewish educator Erica Brown teaches, Jonah's descent into Jaffa and then into the boat presages the deeper descent that he experienced. The Hebrew root Yud Resh Daled, meaning descend or go down, is repeated as the prophet sinks lower and lower. He lacked even the most basic instinct of self-preservation as he fell into what is nearly a comatose state while the ship was at breaking point. The captain was so intrigued by Jonah's behavior that he left his urgent responsibilities in the storm to wake the sleeping prophet with the question that rings in the ears of every person on Yom Kippur. How can you be sleeping so soundly? The sleeping center has indeed woken up in Israel. Here in the diaspora, I believe the time has come for us to wake up too. For the story of what is unfolding in Israel is fundamentally our story as well. In a recent webinar on the topic of the relationship between diaspora Jewry and the protest movement in Israel, the well-known commentator and journalist Daniel Gordis remarked, "To stay silent is to put yourself on the wrong side of history. The ways in which this history is going to be written, the action or inaction of diaspora Jewry is going to be a part of it." Being in Israel this July made me realize just how significant this moment is. If I learned anything from my experience, it is that the protest movement is reflective of so much what we celebrate in Israeli society, as well as in our own Canadian Jewish community. It is the aspirational Zionism that represents so much of our own affinity for Israel. The Israel of technological innovation, of arts and culture, the Israel of women's rights, of LGBTQ pride, of creative and pluralistic Jewish expression, of the ingathering of Jews from around the world. To have witnessed the protests was an eye-opening experience for me. I went to 2 of the Saturday night protests in Jerusalem, and I want to paint a picture for you of what I saw. When I arrived, the very first thing I noticed, besides the noise, were the T-shirts. These protests are very organized as a coalition of many smaller interest groups with one large umbrella group that oversees the logistics of the demonstration in each city. The tribes of Israel were arrayed there, each with his or her own T-shirt. Now, sometimes there is tension between the groups, but there is an understanding among them that healthy democracy is the foundation upon which the entire society is held together. It is part of what makes the movement so powerful, because the groups are coming together despite their differences for a higher purpose. The demonstrations are full of passion, and they are well organized and very peaceful. In Jerusalem, which I know is different than Tel Aviv, the protests follow a consistent formula. They always, first of all, start after Shabbat so that everyone can participate, secular and religious alike. People gather outside of the president's house and hear from 3 speakers on the main stage, representing the spectrum of the residents of Jerusalem. Speakers might include men, women, religious, secular, Jewish, Arab, academics, students, rabbis, authors, to name a few. And from there, the group marches to the Prime Minister's house, about a 10-minute walk away. But before the group begins to march, the leader from the stage announces the singing of Hatikva. And something happens. It immediately gets quiet. The drums and the chanting cease into silence, and everyone sings together. And there I witnessed all of the Israeli flags, the cross-section of the protesters standing side by side and singing of the hope of this nation, for what it can be, for what it was created, and for what we continue to dream. It's just one of those wow moments being in Israel. And both times I heard it, I cried. I came back to Vancouver a few days before the protests reached another one of those moments of historical significance. The Knesset was set to make the key vote about amending Israel's basic law to cancel the High Court's ability to overturn legislation that it deems to be unreasonable. Preceding the vote, there was a march of protesters from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. You probably saw this on the news. What started as 250 protesters marching from Kaplan Square in Tel Aviv grew over 3 days to 20,000 people in the scorching heat. Despite the effort, however, the bill passed in the Knesset. And so I checked in again with Danielle. WhatsApp audio number 2, July 24th. Hi, Carey. It is a horrible and sad day. It feels like a day of mourning. As I was trying to find my way home, the car somehow just took me to the Har HaMenuchot cemetery. I stopped to sit by my parents' grave. Never in a million years could my parents have believed this would happen in Israel, that this could happen to the Zionist dream, this incredible miracle. It's so scary. These are early days still. I am hoping that we will have energy for more, and this is not the end. When I met with friends in Israel this summer, the most common question the Israelis asked me was about you. What do the people in your synagogue think about what is happening here? While clearly I could not speak for each of you as individuals, I shared my perceptions of the general mood I was hearing from you over the past year, mostly one of worry, paralysis, and shock. We don't really have a clear sense of how to navigate this. For so many of us, in particular those of us who have loved and defended Israel through so much of her history, it is an uncomfortable feeling to want to speak out in a critical fashion. In this discomfort, we can find inspiration in our tradition. This afternoon, just before we hear the Haftarah of Jonah, we will read the Holiness Code of Kedoshim from Leviticus chapter 19. And among the well-known ethical mitzvot of this parasha, one mitzvah that is quite resonant with our time is Hocheach tochiach et amitecha. You shall surely rebuke your fellow. Now, it's one thing to rebuke your enemy, but the value here is the instruction that it is not only allowed, but required to rebuke your family when you see that something is not right. And in doing so, we don't make them into an enemy, but through our loving relationship, we will continue to consider one another a friend and fellow. We learn in the Talmud, Rabbi Hanina said, Jerusalem was destroyed only because the people did not rebuke one another. Standing up in defense of the democratic character of the state of Israel is an unequivocally positive action taken in support of Zionism. And rebuking a government that is determined to diminish the power of the courts, that gives powerful cabinet positions to racists, and flirts with motions toward autocracy is not only allowed, it is required of us. The Jewish community of the diaspora, in particular our proud Canadian Jewish community, has come to the defense of Israel time and time again. This is another time in which we are being called to come to Israel's defense. It is an act of incredible love and commitment to the state of Israel to speak and act in support of the Israelis who are working so hard to defend democracy. In the past year, we, as your Klei Kodesh, have offered opportunities for learning to help our community navigate these waters. We will continue to do so and to stand proudly as a congregation in solidarity with those who are working tirelessly in Israel, week after week, to protect our shared vision of a Jewish and democratic state. This is why you might have noticed the sign on our front lawn. It's designed by the Israeli Reform Movement with the words, B'Shem HaYahadut Nagen al HaDemokratia, defending Israel's democracy for the sake of Judaism. And the banner of the Megillat Ha'atzmaut, the Declaration of Independence, is in our front lobby. Because we think it is important to make a public declaration acknowledging that we stand with the people of Israel, just as we have done so many times in the past. If you are curious to learn more or keen to get involved, we have many opportunities for engagement. Please come and hear from the voices of Israelis who have been at the forefront of the democracy movement. And with no time to waste, come back tomorrow night. We are gathering right here as we welcome the protest leaders Michal Muscat Barkan and Ora Peled Nakash, in partnership with Unacceptable, a global mobilization of expat Israelis. These two leaders will be visiting communities in Seattle and Vancouver, and we are proud to host the Vancouver event here tomorrow at 7 p.m. We will have more opportunities to hear from visiting Israelis in October, as well as the incredible privilege to learn with our Temple Sholom scholar, Yossi Klein Halevi, whom we were honored to hear from last week on Rosh Hashanah. We are also exploring a Canadian Reform Solidarity mission to Israel in the coming months. Please stay tuned for more information about this opportunity. Israel needs us more than ever right now. As Western diaspora Jews, we value the blessing of living in stable democracy. We know what it is to be protected as Jews with the rights afforded to us as citizens, even when we are a tiny minority of the population. We know what it is to hold on to our Jewish values and embrace a democratic character. We speak the language of a tolerant Judaism, and that can be shared in inspiring ways among our people. Just before Rosh Hashanah, I sent Danielle a message to wish her and her family a Shana Tova. She told me that they were all doing well and updated me on her oldest son's first few weeks in a Mechina program before he starts his army service. She was glad he would be coming home for the holiday. And she ended with the following. WhatsApp audio number 3, September 13th. Hi, Carey. Shana Tova to you and Greg and the kids. I hope you have a meaningful Rosh Hashanah. Pray for Israel. Oh my gosh, yeah. Maybe the prayers of your congregation in Vancouver can make a difference. Gemar Chatima Tova.